everyone, and welcome back to another True Crime Tuesday. I am really sorry that I missed last week altogether. I went to Dublin for 4 days, and I really wanted to pre-record, but I didn't have the time. And it sucks too, because every time my channel is doing well in terms of subscribers, something always happens where I can't upload for 1 or 2 weeks and I'm right back at square one. But yeah, also I'm gonna do my best to edit out all the screaming kids, because there's a lot of kids playing outside right now and inevitably my microphone's gonna pick them up. But I'll do my best to edit them out. So today we are going to be talking about the disappearance of Leah Roberts. Leah was 23 years old when she disappeared in March of 2000. She told her friends and family that she was going on a road trip, but she never returned. She was the youngest of 3 siblings. She had 1 older sister and 1 older brother. She went to North Carolina State University, where she studied anthropology and Spanish. She had a bit of a rough going for a while. When she was a teenager, her dad was diagnosed with a chronic lung illness, and he was just sick all the time. And when she finished her first year in university and she was about to start her second year, her mom died very unexpectedly. So she took a year off. And then just as she was about to start her second year again, she got involved in a horrible car accident. She had really severe injuries and she needed to get a metal rod in her leg. Now, despite all of her bad luck, she became one of those people that was, realized how fleeting life was and that she was going to enjoy every moment of it. And she did. She turned into one of those people that was like, I'm going to just grab life by the horns and just enjoy it to the fullest. So in the summer of 1999, she signed up for a program that would take her to Costa Rica. However, just 3 weeks before she was due to leave, her dad died. She still, however, decided to go. I think her dad dying was not unexpected because he had been sick for a while. That's not to say, obviously, that she wasn't grieving, but I think it was one of those things where she had made her peace with it for a while, and she decided she was still going to go on this trip. Just before leaving the United States, Leah gave power of attorney to her sister to mind all of her bank accounts. Since she had no living parents, she decided to give that to her sister. After coming back from Costa Rica, where, according to her siblings, Leah had the time of her life, she went back to university to finish her studies. However, with only 6 months left, she dropped out. Her siblings really pushed her to go back because it was only 6 months and she would have finished the whole degree, but Leah didn't continue. She instead picked up some new hobbies like playing guitar and poetry, and she decided that she wanted to take a road trip to the West. Now, the road trip was to emulate her favorite author, Jack Kerouac. He had done the same thing, and he had talked in several of his books about his soul-searching road trip. So on the morning of March 9th of 2000, Leah spoke to her sister on the phone. They agreed that they were going to meet up soon, but didn't actually make any plans. She was very close to her sister, however, so she really wanted to meet up with her soon. They just never agreed on a day. She also spoke to her roommate Nicole, and they made plans to do some babysitting together the next evening. Nicole came home from work later that day, but Leah wasn't home. Nicole didn't immediately worry because Leah was living off her parents' inheritance, so she wasn't tied to a fixed schedule. She could come and go as she pleased. However, Leah didn't come home later that night or the following morning. And when she didn't turn up the following evening, when she had made plans with Nicole to go babysitting, Nicole got worried. But it wasn't until March 11th when she still hadn't turned up and she had plans to meet family that day that Nicole decided to call the police. There isn't much information as to what police did with this case, but most likely their reaction was, she's an adult, she can do what she wants. And it did seem like she left on her own. Nicole and her sister went through her room and found that half her clothes were gone, as well as her kitten B, who she had only just gotten. There was also a bundle of cash on the bed, which was enough to cover a month's rent and the expenses. And there she left a note behind to her friends and family to say that they don't have to worry. She wasn't suicidal. She was actually the opposite. She was just enjoying life. And she referenced her favorite author again, giving the impression that she had in fact gone on this road trip. Her sister and Nicole both assumed that she'd be back soon, given that only half her clothes were gone. And judging from the fact that she left things behind and from kind of what she said, I think Leah was also intending on being back soon. Now her sister remembered that she still had power of attorney over her bank accounts, and this became very important in tracking Leah's whereabouts in the next few days. She found that on March 9th, the day she left, Leah had withdrawn a few $1,000s from her account, and she had paid for a motel near Memphis, Tennessee. She eventually made it to California, and on March 13th, she made a purchase at a gas station in Brooks, Oregon, just after midnight. After this, all activity on her accounts stopped. After talking to some of her friends, her sister deduced that she was heading towards the Cascade Mountains in Washington because her favorite author had talked about this place a lot. On March 18th, her sister expected to get a call from Leah because it was her sister's birthday that day. But instead, she got a call from the sheriff's office. They told her that they had found Leah's car, but they didn't find Leah. Her car was discovered by a jogger near Bellingham, Washington, which is very close to the Canadian border, and it was found off a ravine in Mount Brooks. The jogger had seen a bunch of clothes scattered across the ground, and when he looked over the embankment, he saw the car in the ravine. So the police decided to get involved and search for Leah. Her belongings were scattered all along the embankment and in the ravine. They also found several of her belongings by the car. They also found that some sheets had been hung up, and they found some pillows indicating that someone had been sleeping in the car. And there was also $2,500 in cash found and some cat food, but there was no sign of her kitten. I mean, she only visibly paid for a motel once. There is a lot of speculation in this case that she slept in her car the rest of the way. Yes, she took a lot of money out in cash, so she could have paid for this hotel in cash. But if you think about it, she drove from North Carolina to Washington in 4 days. I Google mapped it, and it's about a 44-hour drive, which means that she drove a lot. So I do think that she slept in her car for short periods of time each time and then continued driving. They also found Leah's ring in the car. It belonged to her late mother, and she never took it off. So that was really weird. There was no evidence of an attack or a struggle. There was no blood found in the car. It looked like the car had gone off the embankment very slowly, like maybe it was parked and it accidentally rolled forward. Police said it rolled over several times on its way down. So the fact that there is no blood anywhere, to me, would indicate that Leah wasn't in the car. Her siblings flew out to Washington to help with the search. They went around to bars, they hung up missing person flyers, they tried to find her everywhere. Among her belongings, police also found a little box with mementos. It had like receipts and tickets from different places on her trip, which again would indicate that Leah was planning to come home to either, well, I would think so, to either like show her family and friends, like, look at all these places I've been, or just to keep these for herself to look at later. One of those tickets was a movie ticket for a cinema in Bellingham, and they could trace her whereabouts that way on the afternoon of March 13th, and then they went over there to investigate. They found that she'd been in a restaurant and she had been talking to two men, not in a creepy way. From what I understand, she was sitting by the bar alone, and there was a man sitting on either side of her who also happened to be sitting at the bar. They both said that she was very excited. She was talking to them about her favorite author, and she seemed very excited about this road trip she was on. Now, one of the men said that at a certain point she called out to a man by the door, and she greeted him by his name, Barry, and left with him. However, the other man nor any other customer in the restaurant or bar saw this happen. Police decided that her car must have been the scene of the crime and that maybe Leah hit her head on the steering wheel without any blood and got a concussion and wandered off into the woods disoriented. So they searched the nearby woods for 2 weeks with helicopters, cadaver dogs, but they never found anything. The investigation continued for months, but with nothing being found, the case eventually went cold. Leah's sister, however, asked police if they could hold on to Leah's car in case this case ever got reopened, which police did. And 6 years later, in 2006, the lead detective was passing down some files to newer detectives, and one of them was Leah's. They noticed that not all the evidence in the case was processed correctly, and that the car hadn't been investigated properly, so they decided to do that themselves. One of the things they noticed is that no one ever looked under the car's hood. So they did that and found that one of the wires on the start relay had been cut. Now, I've seen 2 different versions of this. I've seen that it either means that the car would accelerate on its own without anyone needing to press the gas pedal. And I've seen other reports say that actually the brakes had been cut so the car couldn't brake. I don't know which one is true, but regardless, the car had been tampered with. From here, they deduced that the car couldn't have rolled into the ravine on its own, and that the crime scene had most likely been staged to throw police off. They also found male DNA on Leah's clothing and a male fingerprint underneath the hood of the car, but they were never able to identify who it belonged to. Sidebar, I don't know how people know when a fingerprint is male or female. Maybe the report just said male fingerprint because it was male DNA, but if they can't identify who it belongs to, I don't know how they know it's male. I mean, some women have big hands too, I just wonder that. Now, there is this blog post on, I don't think it's Reddit itself. It looked to me like it was a URL that belonged to Reddit, but it wasn't like the forums of Reddit. And it was a blog post about this case, and someone commented on it who called himself Guy Number 2. Now, he claims that he was the guy number 2 from the restaurant that Leah had been talking to, and he was the guy that saw her leave with this man named Barry. He commented on this blog post and said that police interrogated him for 12 hours and that they didn't believe his story because nobody else had seen her call out to this man named Barry. They also labeled him a suspect because he fled to Canada, but he was in fact Canadian who lived in Canada. However, his two sons lived in Bellingham. As I said, it's right by the Canadian border, and he was coming over to visit them. And he said that he hasn't been to visit them in years because he's terrified that as soon as he comes back to the US, police will arrest him. He's very annoyed with how police have handled this whole case and that they're targeting him, even though he has nothing to do with it. He said that he handed over his DNA, but that it wasn't a match for what they found, and that he has since asked for his DNA to be destroyed, but that police refuse. Now, there are people who really don't believe that this guy is who he says he is. Some people have said, well, why want your DNA destroyed if you're innocent? There are some inconsistencies in your story, things like that. I read his whole comment. I don't know what he gets out of pretending to be someone he's not, because it's not like anyone was looking for it. It's not like anyone. The two men are like a footnote in her story, so it's not like in that blog post they elaborated on these two men and he thought, let me be a glory hog and jump in there. I don't know what he gains out of lying, and it did seem like a very sincere post, but take it with a grain of salt because I don't know if it's true or not. So that brings us into the theories, which for every theory that someone on Reddit posted, they said themselves, but there are counter arguments for it, and that's the way it is in this case. There's not one theory that I think is like super plausible. But the first theory is that she committed suicide, and that she either drove into the ravine but ended up not coming out extremely injured, or actually I guess this is, well, yeah, no, let's go with that. The suicide theory, so that she was either not very injured and wandered off into the woods or wherever to kill herself, or yeah, I don't know, I guess that's the theory. You know how I feel about suicide. I always think that a body should be found, and it wasn't. I find it a very far-fetched theory, yet a lot of people believe it. A lot of people believe that she went there specifically to do that, but I find the whole car being down in a ravine very strange. She could have cut her own brakes or her own relay cable or whatever it was to drive off the cliff, but her body wasn't in the car, and it wasn't found anywhere in the woods. Her kitten wasn't found anywhere. I don't know why she would bring her kitten if her plan was to commit suicide, so I don't really buy this one. The second theory is that she got caught in an accident and, again, according to the police, wandered off into the woods and may have died from the elements. Again, I kind of think a body should be found, and it was clear that her car was tampered with, so I don't fully believe this either. The thing specifically, yes, a body can be hidden for quite a long time and will decompose after years, but let's not forget that she had a metal rod in her leg that would not decompose. If you would walk into those woods today and she had been there, you would still see that metal rod in perfect condition, so I can't find this one hard to believe. The third theory is that that was met with foul play and that someone killed her and covered it up or staged this whole thing by putting the car in the ravine. Whether some people believe that it is this Barry guy who nobody else saw, or some people believe that this guy number 2 did it and made up this Barry story. I don't know why he would make up this story, because the police wasn't looking at either of them as a suspect. By him telling that Barry story, he made himself look suspicious, so I don't think that he did it to cover his own tracks, because he only made it worse, to be honest. A lot of people have an issue with this theory because they argue, why would you dump the car in the ravine and and draw attention to her disappearance. If you had just hidden the car or taken it to your house or whatever, it would have been weeks before anyone noticed she was missing because her family thought she was on a road trip. So by putting it in the ravine, you're drawing attention to it and you're making the police investigate. And it was clearly, according to the police, set up. So a lot of people don't believe this theory. However, I don't know if every person is that smart. Honestly, until they said, well, why would you stage this crime scene? It could have been weeks before they noticed she was missing. I wasn't really thinking about that until someone said it. And it makes sense. But I don't know if in a moment, I mean, if let's for argument's sake say that this Barry guy exists. It would have been someone she just met because nobody in her life knew of anyone named Barry, and she'd never been in that part of the country. So let's say that she met him the day before, maybe even picked him up as a hitchhiker, I don't know, and that he killed her. It was most likely a spur of the moment thing. I don't know why they would have thought in that moment of, how to best cover this up. So I don't necessarily see that as a reason why not to do it, but I would question the motive because all her money was left behind, so it obviously wasn't a robbery. And I wonder then what happened to her cat. She had a cat carrier with her, and for as far as I know, that wasn't found. At least I haven't found that anywhere in her belongings. So I wonder. And then the last theory is that she staged the whole thing herself and walked off to start a new life. Initially, I believed this the most, but there's two things that bother me about it. One, she left all her cash. It was $2,500. If you're gonna go off to start a new life, that would be a great place to start. Two, she left her mother's ring. It was very important to her. It meant a lot to her. She never took it off. She slept with it. She showered with it. She never took it off. For her to leave it behind in the car, I don't believe that she would do that. And again, why stage the whole thing? It's only going to make people look for you harder. She could have also just left the car, hidden it somewhere, and disappeared. I don't know. I do think she left home fully intended on coming back. But that's not to say that something didn't change her mind. I think if people suffer from mental issues or depression, their minds can change like that. So I'm not ruling it out, but based on the things she left behind, I find it a little hard to believe. I would believe that someone killed her the most and that the ring may have come off in a struggle. But the question becomes why then? I mean, any one of those people, whether it was one of the guys in the restaurant or this Barry person, wouldn't have known her very well. And it obviously wasn't a crime of opportunity because they didn't take any valuables. So I wonder why. I don't know. There's two things that I find very odd in this case. One, she talked about wanting to make this road trip. Why didn't she tell anyone specifically when she was going? Why make plans with your roommate that day and then decide to just leave on a road trip and not tell anyone? Especially given that everyone said she was so close to her sister, I find it really strange that she just up and left. And two, she drove all the way to Washington in 4 days. She didn't stop along the way and enjoy the sights and stay for a few days here and there. She drove there with a purpose. She was going there specifically as fast as she could, and I wonder what that purpose was. Yes, it could be those mountains to find herself like her favorite author had, but if it's a road trip, you would think that she would do the whole trip to enjoy it. And it didn't seem to me like she was doing that. And I don't rule it out that she didn't get out of this road trip what she hoped she would, and that then and there she decided to walk away from her life. I just find it strange that she left those things behind. But that's not, I don't know, my gut feeling is going with that theory that she walked away and took the kitty with her. But I just wonder why she left those things behind. But I do also believe that she could have been met with foul play. I find that has the least counter arguments against it, so I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I find strange cases like this so strange, where 9 times out of 10, if you find a car in a ravine, you find someone with it. And in this one case, nobody was there, and she just vanished into thin air. And I don't understand, no matter how many times I've done cases like this, how someone can just vanish into thin air. I don't get it. Yeah, it's been 18 years now, actually, so, long time. Be very interested to hear what you guys think about it. I think it's a pretty well-known case in the US, but I had never heard of it. So yeah, that's it for me today.